Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm excited to welcome back Patricia to the podcast. Welcome back, Patricia.
Thank you for having me back.
Excited to have you back on. And the first time you were on, of course, we each shared our top 5 favorite animated antagonists. So, of course, now we gotta do the protagonists.
Yes. And I'm really looking forward to this because the protagonists are very crucial to any animated incarnation, whether it be in a video game or a cartoon or a web series or what have you. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Yes, very true. Especially, say, if it's a movie, that's the character where we're following them on the hero's journey. If it's a show, that's the character that we're typically spending the most time with. So it should be interesting. And I know when we discussed antagonists, we each had 5 different ones, so maybe there'll be some overlap this time. We'll see.
We'll see.
Alrighty, so I'll kick it off this time. So, my number 5, I'm going with a character that is actually originated with a comic strip. So probably you already know. It's Charlie Brown from Peanuts.
Wow, that's a good choice.
I mean, with Charlie Brown, he is hands down the ultimate underdog for sure, and is the character who, like, with the influence of Peanuts, has shaped so many other animated shows like Doug and Hey Arnold, all those slice of life shows. So just that influence alone. But also, I mean, I always feel bad for Charlie Brown, that he's always so down on himself, that he always feels so unlucky and that people don't like him. He's always so depressed. But then he has those moments of optimism. In the Valentine's special, I remember when he's so excited that he thinks he got a Valentine's Day card, and then afterwards when he has like the suitcase saying, oh, maybe next year I'll get so many Valentines, I'll need a suitcase, whatever, like all that stuff, and it's just so cute. Maybe I'll need 3 suitcases instead of 2, maybe next year. So at least he just doesn't give up despite everything, even though everyone's so mean to him, like Lucy with the football, just all those classic Peanuts gags.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what makes Charlie Brown so relatable is that, you know, he looks through life in a very cynical yet realistic way, kind of like how adults see it. And just for a fact that a kid is going through all of these struggles, and he doesn't always win at the end, but there is a bit of optimism to him. I think that that's pretty relatable. And I think that that kind of optimism, yet at the same time doesn't always go very well, is why the Peanuts comic strip series or the animated specials or even the movie was able to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, true. The movie was really cute, the Peanuts movie. I really liked it.
Yeah, I do agree.
Like, it stayed true to Charles Schultz's vision for Charlie Brown. It was just really well done. It was sweet. But the Valentine's one, oh wait, so I have the quote here. So when they give him a used Valentine, that's right. So then when he's the classic at the wall with Linus, when they're just lamenting their woes, and then he says, well, maybe it wasn't a total flop for me. At least they were showing a little thought for me, even if it was a used Valentine. At least they care a little bit about me. Hey, maybe this is the start of a trend. Maybe this is a whole new trend for old Charlie Brown. Maybe this is the start of something big. Maybe next year I'll get a whole bunch of Valentines. Maybe next year I'll need 3 briefcases instead of 2. Maybe next year I'll even... And then Linus cuts in, Happy Valentine's Day, Charlie Brown. So that's cute.
Yeah. And I think that for the most part, that we know that Charlie Brown was based off of Charles Schultz, and
right.
The little red hair girl was based off of a real person that Charles had a huge crush on, but never fell in love with him. She merely saw him as a friend. So he put all of his struggles and all of his everyday woes into the Charlie Brown himself, and was kind of like the first facet into, like, you know, self-insert characters. That's, you know, some people call it today, in which that they create characters that are based off of themselves.
Right, yeah.
And there's a reason why that, people such as Jim Jenkins and Craig Bartlett were heavily influenced by the Peanut specials, because they brought in such relatability that during the 70s and the 80s, like, realism was just out the door and it was all about surrealism.
Right, uh-huh. Though, and also, it's funny, though, with Snoopy, how, like, Snoopy, it's just that opposing thing, how Snoopy just gets all of the luck so easily, and then Charlie Brown's like, oh, man's best friend. Like, it's just so funny.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, Snoopy is the dog that everybody wants, but they know that it will cause a lot of trouble because he's just so self-thinking.
Mm-hmm. So what's your number 5?
My number 5, it's actually funny because, I recently went through the pros and cons of Hey Arnold the Jungle movie with Aaron Mehta from the Aaron Mehta Show. And we just completed the first 2 parts, and right now we're working hard on getting the 3rd part out, which is the aftermath. And, when you're saying, like, protagonists, I mean, are you referring to, like, main protagonists or, like, characters that can be kind of main protagonists?
I would say definitely main protagonists, like, if they're the title character.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, then. So I guess I can't put Helga on the list, unfortunately.
I mean, I see what you mean, but yes, it's Arnold. But yeah, in many ways, though, it feels like Helga is the protagonist of Hey Arnold, but I guess, not in this case.
Sure.
So, yeah, but that would be a fair one for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. But I did put Arnold on the list. So the reason why I did is because he kind of has the same optimism as Charlie Brown, in which he is a daydreamer. He looks up to various heroes like Dino Spumoni and his grandparents, and he helps people a lot. He saves them from sometimes catastrophic things like helping Chocolate Boy with his chocolate addiction, or helping Mr. Wynn find his daughter before the Christmas holidays, or helping Pigeon Man and Stoop Kid. So yeah, I think that one thing that a lot of people say about Arnold, like, at least during his later seasons, was just that he was so much of a blank character that I was asking you about, like, should I include Helga on the list? Because she has such a deep, complex, tragic backstory. But I think that, when you get to know more about, like, how his parents, they left to San Lorenzo, and, he was raised by his grandparents. He lives in an eccentric boarding house with a bunch of people that are kind of crazy, and that his classmates are really out there, and he's just the calm Buddha character, as Craig Bartlett calls him. I think that for the most part is so interesting to see somebody as calm as Arnold. I mean, he started off as just a daydreaming kid that Craig Bartlett created with claymation, back when he was doing the penny cartoons for Pee-wee's Playhouse. And then eventually he did 2 little shorts, and then eventually he did one for Sesame Street. Then he did the comic strips for Simpsons Illustrated. And then eventually we got the Arnold pilot and then the TV series. So, yeah, Arnold has pretty much transcended into its own phenomenon in its own right, that is not just attached to either Pee-wee's Playhouse or to The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm. What I love about Arnold, he's the moral compass. He always knows what's right. He brings out the best in everyone, in kids and adults. He's helped so many people. That's why I love that whole thing in the Jungle movie when they thank him with the Legend of Arnold with that video, which is just so sweet.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the case on why Arnold means a lot to people. And not only that, but, I mean, the Hey Arnold fan community is massive. I mean, they're the reason why we got the Jungle movie in the first place, because Nickelodeon had no interest in reviving it whatsoever.
Right, mm-hmm. Which is absolutely amazing. And then the fact that it exists after all this time.
Right.
But I know Craig Bartlett, even he had admitted that arguably Arnold was less developed than, of course, Helga. Like, we always knew so much more about Helga's home life, making her a much more sympathetic character, where Arnold doesn't have those. He's relatable in the sense that he's just learning and growing himself as well. So excellent number 5.
Well, thank you.
Yes, for sure. So my number 4, I'm going with a movie now from Toy Story, Woody, voiced of course by Tom Hanks. And I love his arc throughout the Toy Story franchise, how when we meet him in Toy Story, he is this jealous toy. He's intimidated by Buzz Lightyear, and that he's afraid he's going to lose everything that's important to him, that since he's no longer Andy's favorite toy. But then by Toy Story 4, when we see him as a mentor for Forky, Bonnie's favorite toy. So just that growth alone there. And also the fact that he is a leader, that he's loyal, that he leaves no toy behind. And the whole scene in Toy Story 3, which is my favorite of the franchise, when Andy gives away I love that scene so much.
Yeah, it's a great scene. I do agree.
I would say it's like one of the best scenes in any movie, honestly. It gets me every single time. Oh my God, it's beautiful. But just when Andy's talking about Woody to Bonnie, and he says that he's brave like a cowboy should be, he's kind and smart, and the best thing about Woody is that he'll never give up on you ever.
Yeah, and then Toy Story 4 just pretty much just threw that out of the window.
I know, oh my gosh. Well, yeah, because then, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Toy Story 4, but when he decides to stay with Bo. But, I mean, Toy Story 3 was it should have just ended there. I don't know why but whatever, not to like...
Well, I mean, Aaron and I have talked about it multiple times because we do a podcast miniseries called Pix Mix, and we went through not only the Toy Story trilogy, but we talked about the news of Toy Story 4, and when we first saw the trailers, and we talked about Toy Story 4 itself, but... Yeah, in addition to the allegations of John Lasseter and then the whole behind-the-scenes issues that were going on at the time about how, if you remember, that they had to write like 1/3 of the script all over again. So you know that there was some stuff that happened behind the scenes.
True, so like, I wonder how like the original story was, or how much it clearly changed so much to what ended up with. I mean, I did enjoy it, it was emotional and everything, but just not as good as Toy Story 3.
Yeah, I think that from what I remember, I think that originally they did want it to have Bo as the villain, but then they changed it.
Oh, that would have been really interesting, huh? But I mean, I do love the little love story with Bo Peep and Woody, though. It is really sweet. Mm-hmm. But it makes me, the whole thing, though, really, that the most important relationship in the entire franchise, it's Woody and Andy. That's his kid, that's who he loves, like, he wants to be there for him. So with Toy Story 4, it almost made me want Woody to go back to, like, try to find Andy somehow, like, after all that, like, I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, now he's a lost toy with Bo, I'm sorry.
Right, and, like, they were at the little post-credit scene with them, like, helping other toys get new homes, which is sweet. Yes, yeah, that's sweet, too. But just with Woody himself, I do like that arc and that growth throughout each movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could see that while he was a leader towards all the toys, I mean, he knew for sure that he was, like, top-tier toy in the first movie. But then, I guess you could say that he got his humble pie when Buzz came along, and he's like, yeah, I'm not the favorite toy anymore. Mm-hmm. But, I need to get Buzz back right before Andy gets upset, and... right before he moves away into his new home with his mom and his sister. And then Toy Story 2, he has this existential crisis about whether he wants to stay with Andy knowing that he's going to grow up, or that he was going to be with Jessie and Bullseye and the Prospector on going to Japan so that they can be able to be loved in a museum forever by generations of children. So yeah, it actually just and then of course there's Toy Story 3 in which, he wants to stay with Andy despite him going to college, and that the rest of the toys are going over to, Sunnyside. So, yeah, you do, out of all the characters, you do get to see this progression of Woody the most. And I have to really appreciate that they were able to keep into that continuity. And it just makes you interested about, like, all the little details that they were able to put into Toy Story 4 about, like, how, Woody tries to tell Dolly about how to run... a toy session with Bonnie, and, Dolly was like, no, I'm the leader here because I've been with Bonnie the most, even though that Andy was his toy for many, many years. He probably never had a girl owner, so probably it's a completely different thing.
That's true, that's a good point, because there was Molly, but
yeah,
he was always Andy's toy. But
exactly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it also makes you interested about Woody's backstory. I mean, like, it was mentioned in Toy Story 2 that from Andy's mom that he was a family toy. So was it from Woody's mom's side or Woody's father's? I mean, not Woody, Andy. Andy's mom's side or Andy's father's side? So that makes you wonder about, like, where did Woody come from? Because he was an old toy from the 50s.
Right, yeah, with the whole Woody's roundup. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's some Pixar theory somewhere that talks about this.
I know there's the theory that Jessie was originally Andy's mom's toy? Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that.
I mean, that's interesting to think about, but I don't think she was that girl,
I don't think
Emily.
so either. I mean, I think that if it was the case, then she would have recognized the hat and Jessie, but maybe she would have thought it was just a coincidence. But no, I don't think so. It doesn't really match up, especially since she has a different hair color, and it looks like it was in a different location. So yeah, I don't think it matches.
Right. But also, just speaking of Jessie, I do like also at the end of Toy Story 4 when Woody takes his sheriff badge and gives it to Jessie. That's a really sweet moment as well.
I agree.
And that relationship between Woody and Buzz, that's a strong friendship as well. Mm-hmm. And even their growth, too, with them fighting in the parking lot. I love that scene in Toy Story. You are a toy! I just love that. And then with the ending when, that's so touching, though, with at the very end of Toy Story 4 when they both say to infinity and beyond. That's really, really touching.
Yeah, and now that Pixar is going to be working on original stuff for a while, because we know that they're going to be doing Onward and Soul. So they're not going to be working on their sequels anytime soon. So it makes you wonder about, like, it's going to take another 9 to 10 years to do a Toy Story 5, or are they, like, done with it for good? It just makes you wonder. Or maybe they're going to do a series on it, because Monsters Inc.'s going to get an animated series on Disney Plus, so you never know.
I didn't know that. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it'll be their first animated series based off of a Pixar movie in 20 years, because we had that Buzz Lightyear TV series.
Oh, very interesting. I guess we'll see. Yeah, because that's the thing, though. Toy Story 3 just felt like a definitive conclusion, but really it's the end of Andy's arc, so then that's why with this one, it's focused on the toys and Woody and Bo. But, like you said, we'll have to see, because it's very possible we could see a 5th Toy Story movie.
And if it is, who's it going to be focused on?
Maybe Andy's kid. If, I would think something like that, like a whole new generation. But then, if you think about that, then it's like, what's the point? Just kind of rehash things,
Yeah, especially since none of the original toys are there.
Yeah, that's another thing I didn't like about Toy Story 4, how they didn't really have much of a story at all, the other toys. They were just kind of popped up here and there, and then just at the very end when they all say goodbye. So I didn't care for that.
No, I can understand for Mr. Potato Head, because they were reusing old lines from Don Rickles because he had passed away. Right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. The other characters were very underutilized.
Yes, that was disappointing, though. But I did like I forget the villain's name, the doll, but then she ended up...
Oh, Gabby.
Right, yes. And that was sweet, though, then, because she just wanted a home. She wanted a kid, so that was sweet, though.
It was. I say that she's, like, the most sympathetic villain, because in the first movie we had Sid, second movie we had the Prospector, and in the third movie we had Lotso.
Ugh, he's the worst. I hate the classic surprise villain reveal, which I remember we talked about when we talked about antagonists. Oh, gosh.
Yes, we did talk about that. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that they were able to do a twist on Gabby, because I think Pixar knew that Disney was doing the whole surprise villain thing, because they did it for Frozen, they did it for Zootopia, they did it for Wreck-It Ralph, so I think that they had to, like, mix things up.
Yes, and that worked. I did like that. I thought that was very clever. And I also liked Bo's little, what was that? Oh, Giggle McDimples, the little sidekick Polly Pocket thing.
I thought that was very cute.
That was a fun character, yeah. And I also, just not to talk so much about Toy Story 4, but one other thing I liked was with the sheep, like with their names. It's like, oh, they have these, I forget their names now.
Billy Goat
Billy Goat, right. He's like, oh, they have names? And Bo says, yeah, of course. You didn't ask, like, this whole time. Like, of course they have names, and they're girls. Of course. It's just so cute. And I liked Bunny and Ducky, too, speaking of. Like, all these misfit toys coming together. That was sweet.
Yeah, that was sweet. And we're apparently going to get a new Pixar short coming soon that focuses on Bo. So that should be interesting.
I saw the preview for that. I mean, I don't have Disney Plus, though, but maybe at some point I'll have to get it. But
I do. I'll have to take a look into it. And that'll be something that Erin and I will have to talk about in Pix Mix, because that's the only thing that we haven't talked about are the Toy Story shorts.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And then I know, though, that Jim, listen to me, that Tom Hanks... It doesn't voice Woody in that, though.
It's voiced by his brother, yeah.
It's his brother, that's why I'm saying Jim. Yeah, Jim Hanks, who voices, like...
Yeah, he voices him in video games and in the toys.
Right, mm-hmm. But yeah, so overall, though, the whole point with all of that is that Woody is awesome. I love Woody.
Yeah, Woody's a great character.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you're number 4.
My number 4 is also a Disney character, although not from Pixar. It is one of the Walt Disney animation films. So
Nice.
I have talked about the Disney princesses before. I've even did a discussion about like some of the movies with my friend Chris Moore, aka Rowdy C from TV Trash. We talked about the Renaissance era, the Golden era, and we've talked about the Disney Toon Studios, where it was the direct-to-video movies. And we're planning on doing one next month, discussing about the Silver era, which we'll be discussing about the movies from the 50s and 60s. But my favorite Disney princess is Belle.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I've talked about this before in that Disney Renaissance podcast, but I was very... I remember when I first saw Beauty and the Beast. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old in 1991. And I think that what really captivated me about that movie was just how relatable she was, about how she was just the awkward and odd one amongst this provincial town, and that how much she loved reading, and that how she was very brave and determined, and she wasn't going to take any nonsense or any, she wasn't going to be stressed out by anybody who was going to tell her otherwise. She basically just she stood her ground. And especially with the scenes in which she was told by Gaston that, he wanted to marry her, and then when she saved her father from the Beast Castle, and then when she became his prisoner, and she didn't take any of his yelling or his abuse when she was rescued from him by the wolves. So I think that she's just a fantastic character. I mean, if it wasn't for Belle, then I probably would have chosen Tiana from The Princess and the Frog. But I enjoy Belle very well. And I actually met Paige O'Hara a few years ago in a convention in Florida somewhere. Yeah, in addition to, Linda Larkin, who voices Princess Jasmine, and also the woman who voiced as Pocahontas. She was there too. They were very nice. I think I pretty much have met all of the voice actors for them because they love to go to conventions, especially around in Florida because that's where Disney World is. And it was a convention in Orlando. So I've met Jodie Benson. I've met...
They're all iconic, yeah.
She was very nice. Yeah, she's very nice.
That's awesome.
And I've met Ming-Na Wen, who voices Mulan. Sadly, I didn't get a picture with her because, she was about to leave and she needed to go, really quickly. I just shook my hand and, I thanked her, and, for her stuff on Mulan and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And let's see who else. Jennifer Hale, who is the current voice of Cinderella. And I think that's... Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I haven't met the actress of Princess and the Frog because I know she doesn't do a lot of conventions, and obviously I haven't met Mandy Moore, or I haven't met Kristen Bell, or Idina Menzel, or the girl who plays as Moana, or the actress who plays as Merida. Even though that's a Pixar princess, not Disney.
Right.
But you get what I'm
True.
saying. But, yeah.
But I mean, Disney owns Pixar. But yeah, I see what you mean. Right.
Yeah, I
know there's that whole
saying,
joke in Wreck-It Ralph breaks, what's it called? Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph breaks the internet. They make that joke,
yes,
she's in a different studio, whatever, Merida. Like, oh gosh,
Yeah, that was like my favorite scene in the movie because it's just breaking the fourth wall of all these Disney princesses, and the fact that Vanellope just so happens to be a princess, and Sugar Rush, I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't have, but to be fair, they didn't have all the princesses there. Like, Kida from Atlantis the Lost Empire is not in it. And the princess from the Black Cauldron is not in it, but then again, like, Disney likes to sweep that movie under the rug.
Like, no, just forget about that.
Yeah, like,
that's so funny.
We do not know about this. Yes.
Oh gosh.
I know. And Disney princesses' rules have changed over the years. Like, originally Alice from Alice in Wonderland was a Disney princess, even though they removed her because she's not. Technically, Mulan shouldn't even be on the list either. And then there's also, like, Nala from The Lion King. But that's kind of weird.
Right. And also, Meg from Hercules, she's not a princess either.
No, she's not. Even though that at one point she was. And I actually met the woman who played her, Susan Egan. She's really nice, too. Although the person that, was at her, had her desk coordinating, like, the rules and stuff like that, she wasn't so nice.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Yeah, but Susan was awesome, especially since nowadays more people know her as Rose Quartz in Steven Universe.
Oh, wow. So that's really nice, you having the opportunity to meet them and tell them how much all of these princesses mean to everyone. That's really awesome. Yeah, that's really sweet.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially Belle, because I was kind of like outsider. I didn't really connect with anybody either. I loved reading, and Belle was kind of like a role model when I was a kid. And I even told this to Paige, and she told me that, a lot of girls also felt the same way. And that's why, she loves hearing it from them whenever that she goes to conventions or to expos or anything like that.
Yeah, that's so sweet. That's really nice. Having that connection with these characters and that relatability, that's really awesome. All right. So, we're up to number 3 now. All right, this is the only one I think you may have on your list, but we'll see. My number 3 from As Told by Ginger Foutley. I mean, I know how much you love As Told by Ginger. I absolutely love your podcast with Casey and Ashley. We're in between. That's such an amazing podcast, and go check it out if you're a big fan of As Told by Ginger. But Ginger, of course, voiced by Melissa Disney. I love that Ginger. I related to Ginger too. Like, I mean, when this show is turning 20 this year, I just realized 20th anniversary will be coming up.
It is actually, yeah.
That's exciting. But
yeah. I wonder what's gonna happen. Maybe Nickelodeon will do something. No, they won't.
Oh my god, I know, right? Like, but anyway, with As Told by Ginger, I love that she's a writer and she's insightful, that she fights for what she believes in. She has a great relationship with her mother, Lois, and she looks out for her brother, Carl. And I remember watching the show when I was a kid. That episode, well, first off, Hello Stranger, one of the best episodes of the series, obviously. And the scene at the end when she is talking to her mom, and then she says, "Mom, I just want to say thanks for the flowers." And it's just such a touching moment because Lois had given her the flowers but written it, like, pretending to be it was from her father, and then Ginger just knew it was from her. Yeah. And it's just a really sweet moment. They're such a wonderful relationship. And I love just so many moments throughout the show. I love her song in Summer Camp Caprice, even though I know you despise Sasha.
I hate Sasha, yes. I don't mind the song, even though I know it was written for him. But
yeah, I know, like, waste of a song. She should have written it for Darren, but anyway.
But they weren't dating at the time.
Right, I know, and that's the whole thing, though. It was a summer love, but that's just, it's okay. But I love the song. It's really sweet. It's just a really cute song. And of course, And She Was Gone, such a powerful episode with her poem. And I remember as a kid watching that episode, and when she was typing on the typewriter, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous, Ginger's using a typewriter. I want to type on a typewriter. I do remember that. Oh my gosh. But just love the show so much, and she's an amazing protagonist. Seeing her grow throughout the show, that she does have her flaws, but that she stays true to what she believes in. And then we see at the very, very end with her success that she's married to Darren. They have a child that's so cute. And then she's reading from her book, so she's a published author. So I love that we get to see her resolution.
Yes, and now you understand why the show is called As Told by Ginger.
Yeah, right. That's what's so clever, too. So that Emily Kapnick had that idea all along, that she was reflecting on her childhood. I guess she had written a book, obviously, about her childhood. So that's just really awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And we already know that Ginger was going to be telling this story about her life because not only in the title, but also throughout the narration, throughout the series, where she was writing in her diary, and you actually hear her thoughts about everything that's going on. So it actually does make a lot of sense when you get to the ending, in which, she's reading a book called As Told by Ginger, and she's telling it to a book reading, and she's a published author, so it all intertwines together on why the title makes a lot of sense.
Right, yeah.
And that was something I told Casey and Ashley the first episode, when I knew what the title was from the beginning, and it was kind of an interesting revelation when they figured it out.
Yeah, that must have been cool to have seen that for the first time, and yeah, like that reveal. And just the fact that the show is so relatable, too, with so many of the Klasky Schupo shows.
Yeah, it's just a shame that still nowadays it's being still ostracized for its animation. I've heard people who say they will not watch it because they just cannot stand the look of it.
That's so ridiculous. I've seen that even about Rugrats too, though. Which is like, so dumb. But I know with this show, but it's like, who cares? I mean, what's so great about it are the characters and such strong writing, and just the fact that they're growing up. They're in middle school. They're just facing things like dealing with things with friends, relationships, all that stuff. So it's all just it's the kind of show that I appreciate much more now as an adult compared to when I was younger. I was young when it premiered, but
yeah, I think that's why the show didn't really catch on. I think I talked about this with Eric Molinsky, who was one of the storyboard artists that we had in the episode. What was it? I did the show and I know you're. I'm kidding. But yes, Lunatic Lake. That's what it was. Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so in Lunatic Lake, we that was one of the episodes that Eric Molinsky did the storyboard for, and he was talking about how that Nickelodeon didn't exactly know how to promote this show because it was completely different than any show that they had. The show came out in the year 2000, and we had shows like SpongeBob, and then later on we had The Fairly Odd Parents, and Chalk Zone, and My Life as a Teenage Robot, Danny Phantom. And so there were a lot of shows that were like either superhero shows or comedic shows. Something like As Told by Ginger kind of like stuck out like a sore thumb, especially since it was kind of like toward the end of the Klasky Csupo Nicktoons, in which they kind of like dominated throughout the 90s. Like 1/3 of the shows from the 90s were from Klasky Csupo. And then eventually we had All Growed Up, which spun into All Grown Up.
Trash.
I know. a short that they didn't like doing, and it was a show that they hated working on.
That's so sad. Oh my god. And then when Klasky Csupo Studios, like, when was it, 2004, when all those shows ended?
Yes.
Like, when everything was canceled. But then that show kept going, so then the animation was different. I remember, like, at the time, seeing commercials for it and being like, what the heck happened to All Grown Up? Like, it looks terrible now.
Yeah, I think that, a different studio was working on it. It's like, you're trying to animate the Klasky Csupo style, making it look normal.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Rugrats preschool days as well.
Oh, that's whole different. I never seen that, but that's totally different animation, right?
Yes, it was.
Was it CG or no?
No, it wasn't CG. It was still traditionally animated, but it was done by a different company that was not Klasky Csupo. But you can tell that they were trying their hardest to keep the style of Klasky Csupo, but not doing it, because I guess they gotten the consensus that the animation was kind of off, which I'm actually curious about, like how this animated revival that we're going to be getting either this year or next year. I know that they pulled off the movie, which thank goodness they did, because that would have been like all kinds of what?
It sounded, oh my god, yeah, CGI with live action blend. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, so good thing that they're holding off and retooling it. I'm sure it'll probably just come out on Netflix, though. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of in theaters, yeah.
Right. So I'm actually, hoping that they would revive As Told by Ginger as well, but I doubt it at this point because it was never one of their major hits. I mean, as mentioned, I mentioned this before in my video on what made As Told by Ginger a groundbreaking and overlooked Nicktoon, that it was, the first half of season 3 aired in the Nickelodeon, and then it moved over to the Nicktoons network where they would air the rest of their episodes. And it was released on Nick Rewind, not the channel. They had an iTunes service called Nick Rewind where they would air their classic shows there, and then it was aired on the Nick Splat. Well, now it's called Nick Rewind. It's complicated, but it was aired there, and it was aired there in 2016, about 12 years after the show finished its run. And Casey and I, we talked about it, and we're in between about like how Lesson in Tightropes and Dodie's Big Break were aired reverse, and that pissed off a lot of people. And how the other two episodes, which was Battle of the Bands and finally The Wedding Frame, have still not aired on TV. Battle of the Bands, I wouldn't mind if it never aired, because I've already talked about how I don't like that episode. And then The Wedding Frame, I'm hoping it does at some point. I mean, that would be great if it did.
Because it's a great finale, yeah.
Exactly. It is a great finale, and also it would probably give attention that many people have been starving for, because ever since Toonrific Tariq posted his video on As Told by Ginger, a lot more people are tuning into it and watching it and appreciating for what the show did. And shout outs to him, because he also shouted out We're in Between as well. So I think that when the 20th anniversary comes in, I don't know if Nickelodeon will do anything, but I'm hoping that at least there will be some inkling of hope that maybe they will.
Yeah, they deserve it, but yeah, like you said, since it wasn't that popular, unfortunately, but it's just such an amazing show. But yeah.
Anyway, so my number 3 was Ginger, so I think we should move on to number 2.
Okay, very good.
I think we talked long enough.
That's funny. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then my number 2. Okay, so from another Disney movie, my all-time favorite Disney movie, Aladdin.
So I take it it's a boo, isn't it? I'm kidding, it's Aladdin.
yes. I mean, heck, you not. Aladdin, voiced by Scott Weinger. I just love that he is so generous and giving, and like the whole thing when he steals the bread, but then he gives it to those little kids scrounging for food. And I love the iconic "Do you trust me?" And I love that he holds true to the whole thing with the genie when he frees the genie. That's so touching that he ends up having that really nice friendship with the genie. I love the whole relationship with Aladdin and Jasmine when he's saying, I do love you, but I can't keep pretending to be something that I'm not. So just all of that, all of those moments, all of that growth. And really just this first movie, though. I haven't seen the third one. And I've used to watch the sequel, The Return of Jafar, but those are kind of not as good, obviously, as the original. But yeah, I love Aladdin.
Yeah, have you seen the TV series?
I only actually saw one episode with my cousins and my siblings, and all I remembered from it was Iago, and he was sleeping. Like both he and Abu were sleeping, and then at one point Iago just says, what did you say about my mother? That's all I remember. So someone insulted his mother in his dream. That's all I remember from it. So no, overall I haven't really seen it, but
yeah,
is it
I
good,
don't know if it's
series?
on Disney Plus, but I know that the Little Mermaid animated series is. So if it ever does come on Disney Plus, if you haven't, I think you should check it out, because it's one of the better animated series that's based off of a movie.
Oh, nice. And I know it's just mostly like them and Agrabah. Like, there's no Jafar, right?
Not really. I mean, there is kind of like a crossover with Hercules and Aladdin, because that was when Hercules, the animated series, came out, and Jafar and Hades are interacting with each other.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
It was kind of interesting. I'll just let you know that.
I didn't even know there was a Hercules series either.
Yeah, there was. It's a prequel series that took place when Phil was training Hercules. So you get to see him as a teenager, as opposed to like the adult that we see throughout the rest of the movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Jafar is in some parts of it, and there's also the Aladdin video games, like the ones for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, that people still debate about which is the better one. And let's see, there was also a PlayStation version called Nasira's Revenge about Jafar's sister, but we don't talk about that.
Oh, I didn't even know he had a sister. What the heck?
I know it's a bad game.
Sounds
really
insane.
Game.
I used to play the Super Nintendo one growing up. I loved that one. Except I always get stuck on the lava level, like when the screen moves, that level when he's in the cave. Yeah, I always get stuck on that one. And I had it's like the same exact game pretty much on the Game Boy Color also.
Mm-hmm.
I had, but yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And let's see. Have you seen either the Broadway show or the recent remake?
I've seen the Broadway show. I've seen it twice, actually. I loved the Broadway show. Have you seen it?
No, but I want to so badly.
It's honestly really good, but what's clever is that they don't have Abu, though. He has 3 friends instead, but they do it really well. And it's just really clever. It's similar to a movie, like structurally and everything, plot-wise, but there's some really great new songs in there. And they bring back the song which was supposed to be in the original, which I'm sure you know, with Proud of Your Boy. Yeah, so they bring that back too. And what was really cool was when I saw it with the original cast, that Jonathan Freeman, who voices Jafar, he played Jafar in the stage version as well.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. And also, Genie, of course, steals the show. Like, the whole Friends Like Me song is, like, this big number. So it's really fun, yeah. Highly, highly recommend.
Yeah, which actually is interesting because I think the casting for Will Smith as the genie, I think, was trying to be more like the Broadway show than with the movie.
Yeah, Genie's fantastic in the Broadway show. I haven't seen the live-action Aladdin. I really have no intent to ever see it. I mean...
Fair point.
Ugh, just, no, it's enough of these live-action and they're just getting more and more. Now there was the news that there's going to be live-action Bambi.
Yeah,
and CGI.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, which
and then everyone was really immediately making fun of it, like, oh, everyone, we want to see freaking Bambi's mom get killed and photorealistic.
Bambi's mom getting killed in CGI.
That's terrible. I know. Oh my god. Like, no, please. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, in addition to that, I think I also heard Robin Hood as well.
Oh,
I
really?
think. Yeah.
I know also, you must have heard this one too, Lilo and Stitch.
I heard that too. I haven't heard anything since.
Oh my god, yeah, because that was maybe last year or so, but I mean, like, why? I know also Little Mermaid, obviously, and then Mulan's coming out soon. Mm-hmm. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Yeah, I don't know. But, yeah, so we'll just have to see what happens. Mm-hmm. All right, so my number two. It's actually funny because my number two antagonist was Aku from Samurai Jack. So I might as well include the main character himself, Samurai Jack.
Nice. You know, I've never actually really seen that show. I've saw it a little bit when I was younger, but I may have to watch it because I know it was like really, everyone loved what was it, when they brought it back a couple years ago, right? To like conclude everything?
Yeah, season 5.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on all of that?
I've already talked about Samurai Jack in a podcast a few years ago when they were having season 5 out, and I do like some of the episodes there, but I do agree with most people that the ending was very bittersweet and anticlimactic. But, about, the discussion or the debate about, like, it was better to have a cliffhanger than to have the ending at all. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I mean, to be quite honest, I expected that to happen. But, the fact that we had gotten a character like Ashi, I guess that we didn't expect for that to happen, that we would connect with her so much. So that's to be fair. But I do love Samurai Jack, the main character, because you get to see the really great backstory about him being trained as a child to defeat Haku and, his parents and how, they were defeated by Haku and it was kind of like his destiny to defeat him. It almost kind of reminds me of Batman a little bit, in which, his parents were killed off and then he goes around and trains everywhere around the world so that he can be ready to defeat Aku. But then, unfortunately, Aku sends him into the future and he pretty much just takes over and, Jack is on his never-ending quest to stop Aku and, to get back to the past. So, what I like about him is that he is very stoic. He rarely does any talking, but when he does, it either feels really threatening or it's really funny. And that's what I really like about him. He's a man of few words. And that's what, Samurai Jack invokes on. That it's a show that doesn't need any dialogue or very little of it. So you can be able to appreciate the ambiance of it. And I think that a character like Jack really works. And that's what I really like about him. And Phil LaMarr does an amazing job portraying as Samurai Jack.
Oh, nice. I'm going to have to check it out at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And, if you're into Primal, which is a show that literally has no dialogue about a caveman, and, dinosaurs and all that stuff, although, it's more for adults than Samurai Jack. I mean, the original Samurai Jack was for the teenage crowd, and then eventually season 5 was for Adult Swim, so it's more for the adults who grew up with it. So, yeah, just expect that season 5 does get pretty violent.
Interesting.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I remember when I was in high school and it was the whole craze of American anime where shows were being influenced by anime to create their animated series, and you had stuff like Teen Titans and Shaolin Showdown and various other programs in which, ever since they acquired like shows like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and Pokemon, they want to do their own take on anime, but for an American audience. And I think that Samurai Jack is one of the best ones, like, for sure. It's a show that is just phenomenal, even still to this day.
Nice. That's really awesome. I'm going to check it out, definitely. Okay, so my number one from my all-time favorite childhood cartoon, Rugrats. I love Tommy Pickles, voiced by E.G. Daly. And I know it's supposedly coming back with the reboot possibly this year. Is it still this year?
I think so, but I haven't heard anything since.
I mean, but I don't know. So growing up, though, I've always loved Tommy. I admire that he's the fearless leader of the group, that he's brave, he's an adventurer, that he always looks out for his bestest friend, Chucky, and he's a wonderful role model to his little brother, Dill, that he always stands up to Angelica. I love his catchphrase, a baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do. And did you know, by the way, I just randomly found this out, do you know Tommy's middle name?
No, actually, I don't.
Evidently, it's Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
It is interesting.
Maybe that was revealed on All Grown Up, maybe, because I don't know. I never knew that, so.
Maybe.
I know Dill's middle name is Prescott, because that was in the movie, so, but another random quote I have here, just to point out from the episode Showdown at Teeter Totter Gulch, when Tommy says, I'm heading home to have myself a juice, snuggle with my blankie, and go nap.
Yes.
But there's just so much to admire about Tom, even though he's a baby, that he's someone to aspire to be with his bravery. So I love Tommy Pickles.
Yeah, I really loved Tommy Pickles as a kid as well. And, I loved him so much that I just couldn't stand characters like Chucky, because I always thought of him as like a fraidy cat. It's like, why would this be a character I would like root for if he's afraid of everything? But now, given the later seasons, I kind of understand on why they had to do this. And yeah, I think that this would be like the cornerstone of a lot of slice of life cartoons that would come out later in the 90s. Like, you have to have the brave leader, you have to have the scaredy cat, you have to have the girl, and, your token character who's a different minority and all that kind of stuff. They did this in Recess, and they did this with, Pepper Inn, and, a whole bunch of other shows. So, Tommy was kind of like the forerunner into, like, the brave leader that would be alongside with his friends and help him out in their time of need.
Mm-hmm. That's what's so awesome, yeah. But I don't know, I always loved the friendship with Tommy and Chucky, how, even though they're polar opposites in that regard, with him being the fraidy cat and Tommy being the big brave dog, that's what works, that they both, like, that Tommy's always there to boast Chucky up, saying, you can do it, Chucky, so I always loved that, too. That's another reason why I love Tommy, so.
I actually do agree, because when you have a character like Tommy who's like his best friend and he sticks to Chucky by his side, somebody like Kimmy is kind of pointless in my opinion. It's like trying to do the same thing, and she's a brave baby. I mean, they even mentioned this in Rugrats in Paris. She's essentially a female Tommy. It's like, what's the point?
True, Well, that's true, but the only point is just to see Chucky in the role of Big Brother. But I see what you mean, but yeah.
I mean, it's one thing that a lot of people tend to disagree with me on. It's like, oh, but I like, Kimmy. It's like, that's fine. I mean, she's not the worst character addition in the series. And no, I'm not talking about Dill, even though I didn't like him in the movie. In the series, she's just whatever. I was referring to Taffy, the character from the later seasons of Rugrats that nobody talks about.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's so forgettable. Yeah, their random babysitter. I know she was voiced by Amanda Bynes.
Yeah.
It's just very random. Yeah. Because there's no point in it. Oh gosh. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, this is another Klasky Chupo statement about, like, let's introduce characters so that we can be able to freshen up the series because we don't have anything else to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did this for Shane G and for Tyler in The Wild Thornberrys. And they did this for Ray's wife in Rocket Power.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
And some people argue, well, what about Simone? What about Orion? What about, these characters from As Told by Ginger? It's like, they mattered in the plot. That's
you're
the
right,
thing.
Very true, And they didn't stick around. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially Orion with Ginger, that was just, really interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's beside the point. So,
right.
With Tommy, I think that he is a character that a lot of people relate to because we all want to be that brave baby, or we know somebody who was a brave character that we went through something and we need somebody that we can be able to be alongside with so that we can feel good about ourselves. And I think that Tommy really does that pretty well. And, it's actually kind of funny when you watch the original Rugrats pilot, Tommy was voiced by Tammy Halbrook.
Uh-huh.
And when you listen to her compared to E.G. Daily, it just kind of sounds a little bit off. But even then, E.G. Daily didn't sound like Tommy that we would know of until a little bit later on, because she kind of sounded really quiet and raspy.
Yeah. You really all throughout that first season. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true. Uh-huh.
So, it just goes to show you that Tommy was able to progress as a character. And as for his character portrayal in All Grown Up, it's interesting. Like, him having a passion for being a film director and filmmaker, and, he still kind of has his brave moments, but then at the same time, he still has his fears. And then he had his crush on Rachel from the Jewish school and all that stuff. So, yeah, I've never been too crazy about All Grown Up. I just see it as a mixed bag. There's some good things about it, but then there's some other things about it, like, that didn't really click.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Really, after that, I remember watching it at the time, like, watching All Grown Up. When I liked All Grown Up, I loved the one-off special. I wish I had just been the special, and that's it.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be the special, and they were
better.
and then they were just gonna focus on the Carmichael spinoff. But then, that didn't exactly turn out very well, and because they felt that, I guess roughly around the same. Okay, so I told this story before in the Rugrats Kwanzaa special, because the Rugrats Kwanzaa special was essentially an unofficial pilot for the Carmichael spinoff series. But then All Grown Up came out about a few months later, and then it just blew everything out of the water. I mean, it was, at the time, the most watched Nicktoons special ever, until I think the SpongeBob 20th anniversary special pretty much kicked it off. But imagine that. I mean, it took them 19 years for that to happen.
Wow. Yeah, that is impressive, actually. So no wonder they wanted a series then, but...
Exactly. They wanted a series so badly because they saw the ratings that happened. I mean, we're talking about, like, almost Super Bowl level of views. Like, 70% of children
crazy.
watched it.
Wow. I remember watching it at the time. It was so cool, like, seeing them aged up 10 years later, but, oh, gosh.
Yeah, but then they didn't exactly follow it up in All Grown Up. Like, the designs are different, and the only thing that was kept was the whole Emeka thing, but even that didn't really last very long. The designs were different, and some of the characters were changed around. Like, you have, Samantha, who turned into Savannah. Then they added in Harold, and they then they had to do the whole thing about, like, they've been friends since preschool, that kind of stuff. So, and then, they had that episode later on in Rugrats of Rugrats preschool days that would spin off into it years later. So, yeah, it's complicated. But, yeah, Tommy as a baby is fantastic. He's one of my favorite characters. All Grown Up, not really, but...
I agree. I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I'm actually curious about how they're going to do this, this special that they're, this reboot that they're going to be doing.
Right. I know, because are they going to have Dill and Kimmy or no, That's a good
question, yeah.
And then also, obviously, they've replaced voice actors, like people who have passed. I know Jack Riley, obviously, who voiced Stu, and so who knows. And then they got back, I know, Nancy Cartwright as Chucky.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I already know, because there's no point to bring Rugrats back. It already had such a really long run, and it wasn't like it needed any sort of resolution. We already seen them all grown up, so I don't know. But I just love the show, but I'm curious to see how it's going to be with this new reboot. But, nothing takes away from the original, especially the original 3 seasons, that original 65-episode run. Those were definitely the best episodes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually curious about how they're going to do it. So, I would have thought that maybe they would have had like a one-off TV movie, kind of like similar to what they did for Rocco and Invader Zim, in which maybe would have had the characters maybe in their 20s or in their 30s, because, they did it for All Grown Up and they saw the success of that, so why not take it to another level?
That's true. That could have been more interesting, yeah.
Yeah, because we already, 2 of the three, well, technically all of them, because the Jungle movie took place like maybe about a year and a half or, later with them, graduating from the 5th grade and going into the 6th grade. Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling took place 20 years after the original. And Invader Zim Enter the Floorboards took place who knows how long later, because it took a while for Zim to get his head out of the toilet and, Dib, festering away into his computer watching him. So
yes,
they had time jumps. So I'm actually curious about how they're going to do Rugrats. I from what I've read in the comics that they had from Boom Studios and IDW, that, they're still the same babies. So, I mean, maybe that's where they want to do. They want to start, with the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And just go from there.
And then also, I'm guessing they were going to incorporate technology, like, modern technology now, or who knows?
Yeah, Arlene Klasky wanted to include the modern technology because, she wants to update the show. She wants to make it that's fitting into today, while Paul Germain completely disagrees with this and thinks that modern technology will be very distracting. And, to keep it, more grounded. He wanted to give it a timeless feel. But since Paul Germain hasn't been working on Rugrats for a while, and Arlene Klasky, is the whole, pretty much became, like, the one, like, running the whole thing. So I guess they wanted to go towards her sentiment as opposed to Paul's, which is a shame, really.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because he clearly he was the showrunner, I know, with the original run, and he had such great stories.
Exactly.
So... all right, so we'll see, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, so number one. My number one, very similar to how my number one favorite antagonist was Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Mm-hmm. It'll have to be Aang, because Aang is a great character, because the fact that he is a 12-year-old kid and he has been called out to be essentially the savior of the entire 4 nations. Well, technically it's 3 now because the airbenders are gone. That is until Korra, but that's another time. But yeah, I mean, he's a kid who is still acting like a kid, who still has the same mentalities as a kid. But when he's told that he is the Avatar by the monks, the pressure comes into him because, he's a 12-year-old kid, and he is told that he's going to be the one to keep balance into the entire world, and it scares him. So what he does is that he runs away, but inadvertently he gets trapped in the iceberg for 100 years, and there's this whole war that's going on. So he has to grow up really, really quickly. And along the way, he travels with Katara and Sokka to learn about the other elements, and he sees the destruction and the pain and the turmoil that the Earth Kingdom and the Water tribes had to go through. And then basically he learns from, Prince Zuko about, like, Fire Lord Ozai, and, that he's being constantly chased around. So it's just crazy, So I think that for the most part, I think that, well, with Aang, his character arc is very relatable, and I do think that he does progress as a character very, very nicely, and all the decisions that he makes are very valid. Now, let's go over to quickly about, like, the comics, which I don't really have too much to say about because I haven't really read a lot of the comics, but I do know about, like, some of the comics, such as when Aang is going over to the other Earth kingdoms and, toward the Fire Nation to kind of, like, bring the balance back after the Fire Nation had this bad reputation of starting the 100-year war. And also going into Legend of Korra, where we do learn that Aang wasn't exactly a good father, especially over to Kaya and to Bumi, because he loved Tenzin so much, because he was the only airbender in the family, whereas, Kaya is a waterbender, and Bumi didn't have any elements at all until, obviously, we already know about him being an airbender later on, but that's, again, another story. So he had favoritism towards Tenzin, because since Aang was the only airbender in the entire world, and all of the airbenders have been wiped out, he loved Tenzin so much. They would travel around, and he would teach him about all the airbending techniques, and then eventually he would be the only one to have children that did airbending. And so he had this, pride towards Tenzin compared to all of his other children, and his other children resented him. and which made a lot of sense because, I mean, can you imagine if, the most powerful bender in the entire world had love for one person because he had the same thing that you don't have and you don't get the same attention? I mean, that's just unfair. But that's also a great thing because, that makes him even more relatable. He's not a perfect character.
Right.
So, Aang does make his mistakes. He sometimes is a coward. Sometimes, he has issues with separation. Sometimes he has doubts about himself. And, as we see later on in the series, he fails, but he picks himself up and he's able to do it again. And that's what's great about him.
Yes, definitely. That's what's so great about seeing those protagonists and all of their flaws and their triumphs and their failures and all of that. That's what's so great, and seeing that all unfold throughout an entire series.
Right.
Okay, so I have a few other honorable mentions I just wanted to touch on. Do you watch the show by any chance? It's on Netflix. It's called BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, I know about BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, I love that show. So just a shout out to, and have to mention that character, BoJack Horseman. That's so much depth to him. He's an incredibly flawed character, but I love the writing in that series, and I just love that show so much. And then a few other characters. I think Eliza Thornberry, I think she's an underrated protagonist, I would say. And she's a great she could talk to animals. She's amazing. Dag and Norb from the Angry Beavers, they carry the show. You could have done an entire show with just the two of them every episode, and it would work. And then also I love Zim from Invader Zim, but of course Dib is my favorite from that show in particular. But also I love Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life, and SpongeBob, he's iconic. And also an honorable mention to Danny Phantom, just because I had a huge fangirl crush on him watching that show in middle school. And then a few other Disney characters. I love Ariel from The Little Mermaid. She's a great protagonist. Also Mulan, she's amazing. And also Judy Hopps, she's an excellent protagonist from Zootopia. Really strong protagonist.
Yeah, that's a good choice as well.
Yes, and then just from Cartoon Network. I love Courage from Courage the Cowardly Dog. I just think he's an amazing protagonist. Stands up to his fears all the time and always protects his owners. And I love the Powerpuff Girls, of course, but in particular, I would say my favorite is Bubbles. Do you have a favorite of the three?
It's really hard because all of them are really excellent.
Yeah, they each have their own strengths, and just that dynamic with the three sisters is great. Similarly, with the trio, I love the Eds from Ed, and Eddie. I don't know if you've watched that show.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay, interesting. But yeah, growing up, in particular, I love Double D, the smart one. And also, and then also one other character I wanted to mention was Mario from Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What about you? Any other honorable mentions?
I do have a few honorable mentions. Some of the ones that you mentioned were like Invader Zim and Daggett and Norbert. Let's see if I can think of anybody else. If we weren't going to include video games, I guess I would put in Samus Aran because it's from my favorite video game series of all time. As mentioned in the antagonist, I did put in Ridley in there. Let's see others if I can think of.
I know, there's so many.
Yeah, there's so many. Like, Zack and Ivy from Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego are really good. If I had to choose one, it'll definitely be Ivy. But from the 2019 incarnation of Carmen Sandiego, she is the main character, and she is excellent in it. And let's see if there's anybody else. I mean, there's a ton of characters, like, obviously, some of the superheroes, like Batman from Batman the Animated Series, or, there's Terry McGinnis. There's, let's see if I can think of any ones. But yeah, there's just too many to count.
Right, very true. But just love all these characters and that's what's great about being able to relate to these characters and just admire them, and that's just so awesome about all of these shows and movies and everything.
Exactly.
So I guess that about wraps it up. So Patricia, thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, let everyone know where they can find you on social media and everything.
Sure. So you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/oldsschoollane. Facebook.com/oldsschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. And just recently, I started posting up some of my podcasts, my archive stuff, over on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, and Mixcloud. So if you're interested, go look up Old School Lane in either of those podcast sites, and you can be able to listen to my archive stuff as well as listen to brand new podcast a few days before it goes up on YouTube. So on Mondays are Casual Chats, which I'm actually going to be uploading a brand new episode of Casual Chats there before I upload it on YouTube. A few months ago, Remington Keys and I from the Nerd Talk podcast discussed about the 2019 movies that came out for Nickelodeon, which were Rocko's Modern Life, Static Cling, and Invader Zim Enter the Florpus, but we finally finished off discussing about Dora and the Lost City of Gold. So we'll be talking about that, and it's going to be uploaded on all those sites right before it's up on YouTube. Tuesdays are we're in between, so we talked about it when we were talking about Ginger from As Told by Ginger. We're right now in episode 7, which is going to be about Hello Stranger. So if you are new to As Told by Ginger or interested in listening into We're in Between, then you can go check that out, fresh, just like when people listened to it back in 2017. Wednesdays is Pix Mix, where Aaron and I discuss about all the Pixar movies. Thursday is Dream Machine, where we talk about all the DreamWorks movies. And then finally, Friday is the Old School Lane interviews, where all the guests that we've had on the show, we have them over and we ask them questions about various things. So, yeah. And one more thing, at the end of the month, we always will be having the Roald Dahl retrospective. We'll be discussing about all the adaptations based off of Roald Dahl shorts and books. So that's pretty much it for what I got.
Nice, that's awesome. Really cool stuff. And with that, that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, I will be discussing the do's and don'ts of dialogue. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.